And let's continue with lie number 2. The idea that native culture, wasn't primitive. Right? There's your fact. And later on in these videos, we'll also take a look at Pocahontas and the issues of the myth versus reality. First off, the big myth. Thank you, Disney. American Indians lived in balance with Mother Earth, Father Moon, Brother Coyote, and Sister Bear. The natives have a special connection to nature and can talk and sing with the animals. And no, they're people like anybody else, and they have no magical powers, just like in the last video, that white people have no magical powers to destroy, and natives have no magical power to create. The truth, it's more complicated as always, and we're looking at this. So Native Americans were so good at killing trees that a team of Stanford environmental scientists think they may have caused a mini ice age in Europe, and this one we're still figuring out why all of a sudden Europe got really, really cold, and the entire planet got really, really cold in what's known as the mini ice age. And one of the leading theories is that these societies were so large and so advanced at agriculture that they were wiping out entire forests, right, so that they could sustain and feed themselves, largely through the slash and burn technique where you burn out an entire forest and clear it out and farm there. But as a result of Columbian exchange and the plague that ensued, when a lot of these tribes were wiped out, we got reforestation, and the trees grew back, that we had a reverse global warming effect. Carbon dioxide is sucked out of the air, so the Earth's atmosphere held on to less heat, and for a brief period in the 1600s it got really, really cold as a result. So we got reverse global warming as opposed to what's happening now, because these societies were so massive, and then when they disappeared, the trees just breathed all this oxygen in the environment and changed it a bit. So let's take a look at these major societies that were not savages or anything like that. So starting off with Mexico, Guatemala area, we have the Olmec culture, which is kind of the mother culture to the Aztecs and Mayans. Not a lot left behind besides what is passed on to the Aztecs and Mayans. They're from 1200 to 400 BC. As far as the major thing that they left behind are these massive stone heads of likely chiefs, and you can find a few of these around the world. Here's one example in Chicago, and me with a beard. So this is some hard work and some skill displayed here. This is no small thing to do. Moving into the Ohio area, the Edina and Hopewell people created these massive, and again, we don't know much besides what's left behind. They're around for about 900 years, 500 BC to 400 AD. And one of the major things they leave behind are these massive sculpted hills that they left behind, and these are now national parks. And this example is a snake eating an egg. A lot of these are burial mounds or have some religious significance, but this is going to take some extreme planning and labor to create. No small society is just going to make this in their backyard. And so again, this is some serious work and effort and organization. Our local heroes, the Anasazi and Hohokam, 300 BC to around 1400 AD. And their biggest skill is surviving our heat. They're indigenous to Arizona and mostly in our area, and they were able to successfully farm a lot of the crops using canals. And the canals they built are largely the ones that we just paved over and are still using today. We've expanded, but they kind of set the model on how to live in Phoenix and how to survive this heat and farm in the area. We also have some evidence around Arizona of their homes, which are kind of in the Pueblos style, perfect for defense, and that the only way to enter is through a ladder, and if the enemy is approaching, you remove the ladder and can kind of defend yourself from there. And so these are here and there across the state. Around 1400, so pre-Columbus, they disappear, and we're not sure why. Different theories could be that they were attacked. It could be a variety of things. It could be drought. It could be environmental degradation, that they farmed too much for the area. It could be that they just decided to move to a cooler area. They might have gone north or somewhere where there was just more water. We're not sure, and we're still trying to figure that out. Some examples of kind of our local styles. So this is a Four Corners region, the Yakima Pueblo, Sky City. Very well defended. There's really no way to get up there easily. You have to take up some pretty scary paths to get up there. Now it's just, you can kind of take your truck up there. There's a road now, but it's it's a model on how to defend an area. The only difficulty is you have to have enough food to last for a while. They did have places to hold on to water for quite a bit, but as far as farming, they would have to get off the top of the rock and farm down in the valleys below. But great for defense as long as there was enough food. And people still lived there, and they're very nice people. An example of one of their more religious buildings in Picos, and so this is a Kiva, one of their more religious buildings for ceremonies. But this is desanctified because largely Picos was abandoned. It's not on the top of a mountain, it's on top of a hill, so it was not as well defended. But it's a national park, and the park rangers will walk you through it. Taos is one of the most famous. It's protected by the United Nations as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The longest occupied building in the Americas, occupied for the last 1,000 years. And so they're really nice, and you can visit them. They are much shorter than me. The Pueblo people tend to be shorter than me, so I hit my head multiple times, but they're really nice and gave me a bag of ice to take care of myself, but very, very nice and apologetic about my own height. More examples of massive civilizations, the Mayan people, with their massive temples, the sun temples. Also, they're advanced enough to build these temples using slaves, but also enough for leisure time, that they've built up a society with enough time to have games. And so the Mayan ball games is a fun example, and if you dig around on YouTube, you can find examples where we recreated them. Each city had their own court, and the height of the ring was different height for different cities. So it could be on the ground, or it could be 6 feet up in the air. The difficulty, it's kind of like basketball, but you can't use your hands and you can't use your feet. You have to move the ball any other way. And this is a very hard rubber ball. It's not hollow. This is a solid piece of rubber. It's going to weigh several pounds. And it's an interesting thing to watch. And just another example of a massive city. They weaken. They don't die out, but they definitely weaken around the year 1000. Our best theory is that they were just over farming, and the jungle just kind of came back and destroyed a lot of these cities as kind of a revenge almost. But the main theory we have at this point is that they were running out of food. Could have been a drought, but likely it was just overproduction of on their farms. Mississippian in Mississippi. Cahokia, located near modern St. Louis, 600 to about 1500 AD, so likely wiped out from the plague of Columbus. In 1250, it was bigger than London, featured a massive, sophisticated society with an urban center. This is kind of an example of the picture. It's now a national park. They had satellite villages, kind of like suburbs today, with thatched roof houses, and you can see some examples in the corner. There's also some type of court or a game in the middle. We don't know what it is. We're still trying to figure out the society, but you're going to see it's massive. The size, and the Midwest is largely flat, but they were able to build these mountains and hills. There's a massive trade network, and the evidence they left behind suggests a complex economy, and that we found things from the Great Lakes and from the Gulf of Mexico. So they're trading with the Aztecs and trading with other cultures to build this massive society known as Cahokia. Aztecs, one of probably the best examples. Once nomadic, traveled around looking for a sign on where to live, and that sign's on the Mexican flag, where they found a cactus with an eagle on top holding a snake. And that was in the middle of the lake, so they built their city right in the middle of the lake, known as the city of Tenochtitlan. And so they become much stronger from 1200 to 1519 AD, when they are conquered by Cortez, as I said in the previous video. An amazing city built on a lake, which is now Mexico City. It wasn't fresh water, so they'd have to bring water in otherwise, but pretty impressive in that they're building their temples on the top of this. They had floating farms. They were able to move around. Blood sacrifice, and a complex religion is part of it, and so they would capture and sacrifice slaves. And blood sacrifice is no new thing. You can see this in almost every religion in some form. But it is it's very brutal from our modern eyes. And the kings and priests were expected to sacrifice the most, and so they'd have these massive piercings and gauges that we think of today, but all over the kings and priests, because they were expected to sacrifice a little blood too, as they had more valuable blood. And so it could be pretty painful to be a king, but again, you pretty much you're going to be pretty filled with pain if you're a slave being sacrificed here too. So it's just a massive, beautiful society, very complex with their calendars. Same thing with the Mayan calendar. Amazing mathematics and astronomy and these massive temples. So this is a complex civilization. Inca, their big contribution here is their ability to build society on the tops of mountains, some of the highest kingdoms, if not the highest kingdom on the planet. Around from 1200 to 1530 AD until well, the Spanish showed up and ended that one. 2,500-mile empire from Quito to Santiago with their capital in Cusco and a smaller city, Machu Picchu, which is like a summer palace for the king, which wasn't discovered until the 1920s, so it's very well preserved. Massive empire, they're able to communicate using these roads by sending out runners, and they didn't have a written language, so they'd tie a series of knots on a belt, and the pattern that they would tie on the knots, long, short, long, medium, would be able to send a certain message that was passed on and through these runners all the way from Quito to Santiago. And it's just an impressive system to build a society on the mountains and have this code within these ropes to be sent along with the messengers. Iroquois, more modern, and this is a New York area, 1400 to 1800 AD. They don't die out. They just are severely weakened through disease. Their big contribution is their form of government, and they are 5 tribes that are able to unite and become stronger by defending each other. And some theorize that this is one of our early ideas on uniting the states, living in long houses, but it's the government that is really impressive as far as a contribution. A more modern contribution, recognizable one, is the game of lacrosse in the corner here. Very brutal. It's kind of a modern day mix of football, soccer, and hockey. The early ones didn't have much rules. You can just beat each other with a stick all you want, but the more modern game is pretty interesting. More popular on the East Coast. So that's our major ideas, as our major tribes, and they're trying to break down the idea that they were savage and not civilized, but to create these massive societies and complex ideas like democracy, you had to have your act together. So that's myth number 2.